In the dead of night, the single runway lights up on an island smaller than most cities. A cargo jet descends, carrying microchips that will power the world's most advanced weapons. And in a narrow shipping lane between two small nations, a single blocked waterway could hold 12% of global trade. The paradox is striking. In a world of superpowers and sprawling empires, some of the most decisive leverage belongs to countries so small that you can cross them in an afternoon. This is the story of why small nations hold outsized global power and how geography, economics, and strategy turn these miniature states into giants on the world stage. For most of history, size was synonymous with dominance. Ancient empires measured their legitimacy in square miles, population, and the sheer might of their armies. Rome, Persia, China, the Ottomans' power meant land. The bigger you were, the more powerful you were. But as global trade began to expand in the 15th century, a quiet shift started. Portugal, a small nation at the very edge of Europe, built a maritime empire that reshaped world history. The Netherlands, barely the size of modern Sri Lanka, became the world's financial capital in the 17th century. And Singapore, once a swampy colonial port, evolved into a strategic choke point connecting East and West. But through position, specialization, and control of circulation of ships, of money, of technology, or information. As industrialization and globalization accelerated, the ability to influence these flows became more important than territorial size. One major turning point came in 1869, with the opening of the Suez Canal. Suddenly, Egypt and its surrounding microstates sat atop one of the most vital arteries of global commerce. A nation that controlled just 120 miles of waterway could now influence all of Europe's access to Asia. We saw this power in action just recently. In 2021, a 6-day blockage of the canal halted nearly $60 billion of trade, sending shockwaves through the global economy. A second turning point arrived during the Cold War. Small nations with strategic geography, think South Korea, Taiwan, Cuba, Bahrain, and Qatar, became incredibly valuable as proxies or critical allies for the superpowers. Their importance wasn't derived from their size, but from their location and their alignment. They were the chess pieces that could decide the game. Then came the digital age, our third turning point. Global finance, supply chains, and energy networks created new kinds of bottlenecks, single points of failure where a small country could make or break entire global systems. Today, the world's most advanced semiconductors, the tiny brains inside every smartphone, car, and computer, are produced almost entirely in Taiwan, an island smaller than Switzerland. The world's busiest shipping lane passes between Singapore and Indonesia. Luxembourg, with fewer people than a medium-sized city, hosts trillions of dollars in investment funds. And Qatar supplies a significant share of the world's liquefied natural gas, or LNG. These small nations became gatekeepers not through armies, but through infrastructure, resources, and innovation. So how do they do it? How do these small nations acquire such outsized power? It really comes down to four main pillars: geography, specialization, diplomacy, and leverage. First, geography. It's all about location, location, location. The world's trade flows through narrow passages, or choke points. There's the Strait of Hormuz, which sees 20% of the world's oil pass through. The Strait of Malacca handles 40% of all global trade. And the Suez Canal, as we mentioned, handles 12% of global commerce. These choke points are located between or inside countries that are considered small by size or population: Oman, Singapore, Egypt, Djibouti. When you control a choke point, you control speed, cost, and security, three of the most critical variables in global trade. Second is specialization. Small nations often survive by mastering one thing with extreme precision, becoming indispensable to the rest of the world. Taiwan specialized in semiconductors. Singapore mastered logistics and international arbitration. Switzerland is legendary for banking and pharmaceuticals. Iceland is a leader in green energy and data centers. And Qatar is the king of LNG. This specialization creates dependency. When you excel at something the world desperately relies on, your influence expands, regardless of your borders. You become too important to fail. The third pillar is diplomacy. Small states understand a simple rule: survival depends on relationships. Many adopt neutral roles, like Switzerland or Singapore, positioning themselves as safe, stable, and predictable havens for international business and diplomacy. Others choose to align strongly with powerful patrons, like Bahrain hosting the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet or Qatar hosting major American air bases. When you can't rely on size, diplomacy becomes your force multiplier. It's about being smart, not just strong. Finally, we have leverage. Global power today runs on infrastructure, energy pipelines, submarine internet cables, finance hubs, massive ports, and data routes. A small nation that hosts or controls even one critical piece of this global infrastructure becomes irreplaceable. This isn't soft power. It's not about culture or persuasion. This is hard, structural power, influence born from necessity. The world simply needs what you have. This brings us to today, the age of strategic microstates. In our deeply globalized world, the map of influence looks nothing like the map of land. The smallest nations hold the keys to so many critical systems. Global finance runs through Luxembourg, Singapore, and Switzerland. Vital energy flows are controlled by Qatar, Kuwait, and Azerbaijan. Global trade depends on Singapore and Panama. And cutting-edge technology is pioneered in Taiwan, Israel, and Estonia. The modern world has shown us how critical these states are. A series of cyber attacks on Estonia taught NATO that digital infrastructure in a small nation could trigger large-scale military consequences. A potential blockade around Taiwan could paralyze the entire global electronics industry. Overnight, a disruption in LNG supply from Qatar or pipelines running through Azerbaijan could reshape European energy markets for a generation. Even tiny island nations in the Pacific like Kiribati, Tuvalu, and Palau now hold pivotal votes in climate negotiations and have become strategic battlegrounds for influence between the U.S. and China, for superpowers. Securing relationships with these microstates is no longer a secondary concern. It's a central strategy. Losing influence over just one small player could mean losing access to an entire critical system. In a world where information moves at the speed of light and goods move through narrow channels, greatness is no longer measured in territory. Today, power belongs to those who sit at the crossroads of trade, technology, capital, or geography. Small nations thrive not despite their size, but because of it. They can adapt faster, specialize deeper, and position themselves in ways that sprawling states simply cannot. They remind us of a simple but profound truth: power is not about how big you are, but about what you control. And in the quiet corridors of global finance, shipping, energy, and technology, the smallest states now hold some of the world's most powerful levers. Their influence may be invisible to most, but to those who understand the architecture of our global systems, the map of small nations is a map of global power itself. When you look at a world map, what do you see? Your eyes are probably drawn to the giants: China, Russia, the United States, India. Vast landmasses that have shaped history through armies, empires, and sheer scale. But what if I told you that in the 21st century, the true currents of global power are flowing through much smaller channels? What if the future is being written not by the biggest countries, but by the smartest, most strategic, and most specialized? As we move deeper into this century, the very definition of power is being rewritten. Forces that no empire builder of the past could have ever predicted: technology, climate change, and shifting geopolitics are magnifying the influence of nations that once seemed like footnotes. On the global stage, their leverage is no longer a happy accident, it's engineered. It's accumulated, and it's being deployed with incredible precision. This is the story of how small states are pulling the largest levers. Let's start with the digital frontier. Imagine a country of just 1.3 million people, once occupied and impoverished. Now, picture that same country as one of the world's most advanced digital societies. I'm talking about Estonia. They pioneered secure digital identities, completely online governance, and a fully digitized bureaucracy that has become the gold standard for cyber states worldwide. This didn't turn Estonia into a traditional superpower, with tanks and aircraft carriers. Instead, it made them indispensable. Today, governments and massive corporations study Estonia's digital infrastructure. It has shaped European cybersecurity doctrine. And when Estonia faced a massive cyber attack back in 2007, it was a wake-up call for the world. It is no coincidence that NATO decided to locate its cooperative cyber defense center of excellence right there in Tallinn. Estonia isn't powerful because of its size or population. It's powerful because of its expertise. Now, let's follow the money. Small nations have also become financial micro-empires. Take Luxembourg. This tiny European country hosts trillions of dollars in global investment funds, a figure surpassed only by the United States. Or consider Singapore, which has masterfully designed itself into a global hub for arbitration, logistics, and as a safe harbor for multinational wealth. And of course, there's Switzerland. Despite its modest size, it influences global banking standards and monetary stability, all built on a reputation for caution and reliability that spans centuries. What did these nations understand that others miss? They saw that the global appetite for stability, predictable rules, and financial connectivity was practically endless. So, they positioned themselves as sanctuaries for capital. In doing so, they built an economic power that completely dwarfs their geographical footprint. In a world where money moves faster than diplomacy, the ability to host or direct that capital is a quiet but immense form of influence. But power isn't just digital or financial. For some small nations, it comes directly from the ground beneath their feet. Resource-rich small states hold a unique kind of geopolitical clout. Qatar, with its vast reserves of liquefied natural gas, is a crucial energy supplier for both Europe and Asia. Its strategic importance skyrocketed when global energy markets were shaken by war and sanctions. Suddenly, everyone needed Qatar. Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates wield similar power in oil, helping to shape OPEC policy and, by extension, the price you pay at the pump. And it's not just about what you have, but how you move it. Azerbaijan controls key pipeline corridors that bring energy into Europe, giving it a direct say in the continent's energy security. For these nations, their resources are powerful bargaining chips. They don't need to exert force, their influence comes from sheer necessity. Major powers court them as essential partners, regardless of political differences, because the world needs what they have. Then there's the simple, timeless power of location. Being at the crossroads of the world has always mattered, and today it matters more than ever. The Strait of Malacca, a narrow waterway between Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, funnels nearly half of all global trade. A disruption there would send shockwaves through supply chains within hours. The Panama Canal, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific, dictates global shipping speeds, insurance costs, and even naval planning for the world's biggest militaries. Even a country as small as Djibouti, in the Horn of Africa, has become a geopolitical hotspot. Why? Because of its strategic location. It hosts military bases for China, the United States, France, Italy, and Japan. All of these global powers are vying for proximity to critical shipping lanes and access to African markets. These nations don't have large armies, but they control something just as valuable: location. And in the grand game of strategy, location is everything. Perhaps the most surprising new form of leverage comes from a global crisis: climate change. Rising sea levels are redrawing our coastlines, but they're also redrawing the lines of diplomacy. Small island nations, once dismissed as geopolitically irrelevant, now hold significant moral and strategic power in climate negotiations. Countries like Fiji, Kiribati, Tuvalu, and the Marshall Islands have become the world's conscience, demanding global action. Their very survival depends on the decisions made in conference rooms thousands of miles away, and their collective voice within the United Nations has grown impossible to ignore. Major powers now court them for votes, for alliances, and for legitimacy on the world stage. It has a stunning turn of events. The future of global climate policy may well be shaped by nations whose entire populations could fit inside a single sports stadium. Across all these domains, finance, technology, energy, and geography, a clear pattern emerges. Power has shifted from mass to precision, from empires to networks, from land to influence. Small nations excel in this new world because they are nimble. They can specialize, adapt, and align their strategies quickly. They aren't burdened by their scale, they are sharpened by it. They choose their strengths with surgical precision: a port, a pipeline, a data center, a tax system, a digital government. Their influence is highly targeted, and for that very reason, it is highly effective. So, the next time you look at a world map, don't just see the giants. Remember that the real currents of global power run through narrow straits, specialized financial hubs, and digital networks, domains where small nations hold the keys. In our deeply interconnected world, size matters far less than position. Land matters less than leverage. And survival, even success, favors the nation that understands its unique advantage and builds a world around it. The story of small states is not a story of overcoming weakness. It's a story of designing strength. It's a powerful reminder that in a world defined by complexity, it's often the smallest actors who pull the largest levers. Thanks for watching. If you found this perspective interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more videos exploring the hidden forces that shape our world. See you next time.